good. All right, welcome to the Fringe Press Bookworks Author Roundtable. If you're joining us today, we've got three really great authors from the pen name publishing family. We have David O'Sullivan, who's joining us today from Australia. We have, sorry, so excited to get going. Then we have Dorianne Dupree coming at us from North Carolina.
Hey, y'all.
And then we have Ralph Pullins with a nice haircut there coming to us from Michigan.
Hi, everybody.
Show those clean lines again, Ralph.
Look at that. Look at that.
Nice, high and tight, Ralph. Good job.
That's right.
Very nice. So some people may be joining us from the Pit to Pub event that was on Twitter. So we had a lot of fun doing that, meeting new people, and hopefully checking out some pitches that are going to join our family. So thanks for hanging out with us on Pit to Pub, and thanks for joining us today. And before we get into the conversation, we're just going to make a few small announcements. So if you are wanting to join a book club, we've got the book club on Facebook. We're currently wrapping up Pride and Prejudice, and then on the 18th we're moving into A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman. You can find us under groups for Pen Name Publishing Book Club. Join us, read with us. It's a lot of fun. And then since Dory is here, don't forget July 21st. Give up a cup of coffee and help Dory fight cancer. So we're asking 200 people to give up $5. You can go to bit.ly/no-coffee-for-cancer, find out the details of that, and let's give up 1 cup of coffee to help fight cancer. So those are today's announcements. Yay. Today we're talking about something really cool, and as always, we're going to give a disclaimer that we do our best to keep the conversation PG-13, but we're creative people, and when we get passionate, our vocabulary may fail us. Forgive us in advance if we throw out any curse words and we're not too family friendly. Today we're talking about YA novels, something, an article put out in The Guardian about Dan Brown. He is the author of the Da Vinci Code series, which the Da Vinci Code alone has sold 82 million books, and now they're going to re-release it this fall as a YA novel, but they have to dumb it down for the YA audience. So the main point of talking here is, do you have to dumb down a YA book? Are YA readers incapable of understanding a more complex books? And does the Da Vinci Code really need to be dumbed down any more than it already was? So,
well, in my opinion, with young adult books, absolutely not. There's no such thing as a young adult book, and that's the position I would take. That's absolutely ridiculous, and to dumb anything down is to insult any reader of any age, even a toddler, even a person just coming new to books. If you're dumbing down, it's one thing to aim for your audience, but it's another thing to dumb down and to reduce the level of communication in any way. I'm just thinking back to when I was a young person. My favourite books were To Kill a Mockingbird and Catcher in the Rye and these types of books, and they really spoke to me. If those were reduced at all, I would feel that something would have been stolen from me. I would have think that would amount to a crime, just about. So even though I'm not a big fan of Dan Brown, to think you need to lower the standards for people who are younger, I think is a great insult, personally, and it makes me quite angry to see things like that. To change those things because you think someone can't handle them, I really am against that. That's my opinion on that matter.
Well, I totally agree with you, David. I was sitting here, I read this article, and the whole tone of the thing is like, this guy's so damn snooty. He's all like, oh, like he's got this like sort of like high, like the idea that this is like somehow like high art, and I'm like, first of all, the Da Vinci Code, I don't know. I mean, I read it. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was like a really good. I think he was very successful in like world building and creating this sort of like mythology around things. I think he did really well, and obviously it connected with people in some form because he sold like I don't know, what do you say, 86 million copies? Like, you can't. Like,
Give or take
I
4
mean,
million.
so he's doing something right? Like, he's making something that's compelling to people. I don't know. I mean, the concept of dumbing something down is absurd to me. It makes me, like I said, David, I was like outraged. I read this article and I'm like, first of all, I agree with you 100% that I don't think there is such a thing as a YA novel, right? There's something that's like sort of aimed towards that sort of younger audience maybe, but I mean, if I read The Hunger Games and it wasn't like branded as that, I would have been like fully convinced this was meant for an adult audience. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And what about like To Kill a Mockingbird? I read that when I was a teenager. Is that a YA novel? Would that be considered a YA novel?
Well, isn't it interesting? That's such a good comment because if something is dealing with issues that are pertinent and relevant to you at any age, then that's your novel. If something is relevant to you and helping you deal with issues in your life, then that's for you. And so what Catch in the Run, I remember very clearly, did for me was it showed me the point of view of a young person dealing with being a teenager, and that I read it at that age, and that was so relevant to me that I took, and as millions of people do, and I took that, I toted that book around with me for a while. It's not a matter of coming down to a level; it's a matter of dealing with interests, dealing with issues that are relevant. I think that's the most. That's what people who, if you want to write for young adults, I think you should concentrate on writing for issues that are relevant, using as the best language you can, and not trying to think, well, will they understand this? No, I better make it more simple. But I think those thoughts would stand in the way of great creativity. So I think you should aim high, aim as high as possible. Just be relevant.
Yeah, we live in a world where we have the internet. So by definition, a young adult novel is a genre that is written, published, and targets people between the ages of 12 to 18 and what they go through in their daily life. So when I think of young adult, I think of things like John Green, books about being in high school when I was growing up, like Judy Blume, books like that. And like Ralph said, not The Hunger Games. And so I kind of feel like, in a way, it's telling our young kids that are maybe 14 and over that they're incapable of understanding more complex material. And I mean, let's be honest, not the Hunger Games, but the Da Vinci Code isn't really that complex to begin with.
Well, that was my question too. Is this obviously they're trying to sort of expand his reach, right? Like they're like, this is very successful. I mean, they made a Tom Hanks movie about it. Like, if you get Tom Hanks starring in the movie about your book, that's pretty much a win, right? That's a win.
Yeah.
So,
I'm going to interrupt you real quick, Ralph, because if you put it into context, the amount of books that have been sold, if the article says it's enough to cover the entire population of the UK, Greece, and Sweden. So that's a huge reach. I mean, but go ahead. Sorry.
Well, it just seems like, I mean, I can't imagine anyone from even 12 to 18, like, picking up the Da Vinci Code and just being like, wow, this is, like, way too much for me. You know what I mean? I just can't. I think it's an awesome book. I really enjoyed it. And I think everybody likes to get sort of snooty about Dan Brown, and they're like, you know, which I think comes with being wildly successful. Like, people who are less than that often will just pick on people who are that, you know?
They can take it. They can.
Yeah.
When I
wanted to add something about the article. I just found that the article spent more time bashing Dan Brown's book than it did actually talking about the issue that we're talking about. And I did want to add that as far as dumbing things down go for young people, I think I think we're all in agreement that's a huge disservice. But I've raised 2 daughters into adulthood, and one was a competitive athlete. And I approach challenging things might be above your level, as you put yourself in situations where you have to rise to it. And there probably are a lot of young people who would have a tough time with a Dan Brown book, such as Da Vinci Code, as it's written. There are some kids who might not be at the reading level that you and I would hope that they are or expect them to be. But by dumbing something down, I see why they're doing it. They're doing it for money, because that's what makes the world go round. But I think that as far as the concept of dumbing it down, what we need to be doing is allowing young people and people who are adults as well to rise to the challenge of doing something that might be a little challenging to them. If they want, I mean, obviously, if some people are going to read that Dan Brown book and it's too much for them with a lot of the history involved and the conspiracy theories, and some of it's a little scary, I just have a real problem with the whole concept of dumbing down youth or even adults, simply because people tend to rise to the challenges if they want to.
I like that point. That's such a good point. One thing that I must say that I remember from my childhood was accessing a copy of Gulliver's Travels. And it was actually a condensed version, and it had illustrations. And I remember reading, and at the time I thought, well, that's it. That's Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels. That's the book, and I've read it, and I loved it, and it really did make an impression on me. And it wasn't until a few years later that I realised that Jonathan Swift's novel was large, and it was hundreds of years old, and it didn't have illustrations. And I found that out. But still, it introduced me to... So instead of saying perhaps dumbing down, perhaps it made it accessible for me. So from that point of view, it did me a great service, that it was illustrated, it had comic book illustrations, so when he went to Lilliput, the little people were tying him down, you can see it. And the language was at my level. So from that point of view, actually, to make great works accessible to children can be a great service. So I must say that Dory just reminded me that I have accessed a lot of books that were condensed, and that led me on to read things such as Kidnapped and Treasure Island in their full form. So it was actually a very handy step. So I think that we can't deny that giving young adults or younger people, I wasn't a young adult at the time, I was a child, but giving them certain stepping stones to build their confidence can be a very worthwhile service. So on that point of view, I think it shouldn't be dismissed altogether. Perhaps it being Dan Brown, I didn't look at it from that point of view until now. So I'm glad we're having this conversation.
It's actually a really good point, David. I never thought of it like that. My son has a copy of Mark Twain, Tom Sawyer. That's like, it's sort of like, I don't want to even call it dumbed down. What I want to call it is like, it's just sort of simplified. The language is sort of smoothed over a little bit, so it's like it's more accessible for him. Honestly, because I'm such a fan of the book, I was like, you're not reading this. But I'm like, I got the real one. Don't worry about it. You don't need this.
Were you being a snob, Ralph?
No, that's me being snobby. But that is a good point. Like, making it accessible and making it like a stepping stone to build confidence for readers, that's not a bad idea necessarily. And I mean, the truth of the matter is like, most of us aren't going to read like War and Peace, or unless it's assigned to us, or you know what I mean, or say true. Moby Dick for that matter. And it's like, if I read like a condensed version of that, maybe I would be able to like enjoy it, you know?
Moby Dick is actually next month's classic book read in the Pen Name Publishing Book Club. So get on it.
Does anyone know if any of these, some of these more classic novels, I know when I was a young person, I would be assigned a classic novel in high school, for example, and some of them I found challenging. I didn't necessarily understand what the heck I was reading. Some of that might have had to do with the language at the time it was written versus the language I was reading at that time, and that can pose all kinds of challenges. Does anyone know if a lot of these classics have been turned into graphic novels? I know a lot of young people are into graphic novels now, I think more than they were when I was young. I know my one daughter, I mean, she's totally into graphic novels, and she's 22 years old, and she loves reading them.
Yeah,
and so... I'm sorry. Go ahead, David.
I love graphic novels. Just agreeing with you, I love them. I think they're fantastic.
Yeah, and they do
And they
have those. They have like classics, like illustrated classics like that are graphic novel form. I don't know how comparable it is to the original work. I don't, I'm kind of a source material kind of cat myself, so.
Yeah.
Well, I think we tend to read I think no matter what age we are, we tend to read things that we can relate to. And if you're going to hand somebody a book that is way above their abilities, and maybe that's not really relevant to Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code specifically, but there is value if someone likes to read graphic novels, they otherwise would not really be interested in reading Great Expectations as Great Expectations, and they read it in a graphic novel, then you're exposing a young person to a classic that they otherwise might not read.
Like Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
Yeah.
And things like that have been taking those classics and interjecting pieces for the modern audience. But as you all are talking, what I am thinking about is the last conversation we had about Harry Potter and how it's just important to encourage people to read and get a book into anyone's hands by any means necessary. But when it comes to Dan Brown, the writing in general is pretty simple, and the Da Vinci Code became popular because it was such a new world, and it brought on this mysticism of the Illuminati and the Knights Templar and pieces that were always kind of hidden to society and made them real. So if we dumb it down, are we going to lose that excitement? Because for me, the first time I read Dan Brown, I actually read Angels and Demons, and I was 20 years old, and I just picked it up on the fly, and I flew through the book because it was unlike anything I had ever read. I didn't pay attention to the writing, I just paid attention to the fact that I was moving through this mysterious world of art and hidden signs, and it made me want to see my world differently. So can you not lose that and still present this world that he's created and this tie-in that he's created if you take it down for the YA audience?
No, in my opinion, you always lose. You're going to lose that what made the work great. And that's the compromise you have to make between accessing a book, accessing a work, and for example, Charles Dickens. Every line of Charles Dickens is infused with humour and deep thought. That's why Charles Dickens is a master. Mark Twain's the same. Every line is so well considered. Hemingway, there's not a word out of place in his best works. And you cannot give it to somebody who isn't a genius. And Dickens, Hemingway, and Twain are geniuses, and expect for that same work to exist. For example, I might compare it to science, where if you take something from Einstein and you make it accessible to the general public, a theory, that's great. You're putting that theory into the world, and you're helping to share that knowledge. But you will not be able to capture the same magic as the genius originally created. But that's the compromise you have to make in life, and that's what life's all about, in my opinion. That's what life's all about. You cannot have, you just can't have everything given to you. But if we can, if as readers have a taste of this world, then perhaps in years to come we can make our own journey and revisit the originals. That's what happened with me, I think.
I really liked Dory's comment because I hadn't seen it that way about, sorry, I think it was you, David, with the classics, the illustrated classics. I hadn't seen it that way. So if they make this dumbed down for YA, do you think there's a possibility that the people who read the YA edition will then read the full edition? Or do you think they'll just be like, oh, I've already read it, and not give the full edition a chance? Because if we step away from Dan Brown, if this works for Dan Brown, we're going to see this. This is really going to impact the way YA is structured and published in the future. And so if they keep bringing out YA editions of bestsellers, how is that going to impact the YA market? Are we just going to be flooded with editions of bestsellers, and that's going to destroy opportunities for YA authors? Or you know, so it has. That was not a clear question at all. That was like one thought here, one thought here. You guys put it together for me.
No, I know. I mean, I understand what you're saying. Is like basically, like, if we just constantly like rehash stuff that's already been done for just sort of like, you know, retrofitting it for a younger audience, like what's that going to do for an actual original works for the young audience novel? And I mean, it's the same thing. I have been thinking about movies. Like while we're talking, I've been thinking about movies where when I read, is that right? Like yeah, because we're a bunch of authors. I've been sitting here thinking about movies. But I was sitting here thinking about Jurassic Park, right? Like, so when I read Jurassic Park, you know, I was in probably high school or whatever. It was just marvelous. I mean, I loved it. It was like so like just the whole idea of like complex systems getting, you know, and it was like so detailed and so rich. And then I saw the movie and I'm like, yeah, you know, there's dinosaurs and, you know, they kind of captured some of it and they didn't really, they missed this whole section with this part and they missed kind of the main theme I thought was about like not being able to control complex systems. But so I guess like what I mean is, I guess my main point here is that there's two separate entities there, right? Like,
Yeah.
one is the richness and fullness of the original work, and if you can get there and enjoy that, then that's awesome. But you can also watch the movie. You know what I mean? Kind of get the main gist of it and move on with your life. You know, not everybody wants to get down with the details.
Yeah.
Well, and another thing is there's so many different ways to tell the same story and make it a kind of a different story. And because how people receive stories, it's different. Not everybody's a reader. Some people are just movie watchers. Some people receive stories through music. You know, and so I guess I'm just more like there really is no hard and fast rule about it. I mean, I guess when we started this out, I'm sitting here thinking, well, this is awfully stupid. They're going to dumb down this book. But now I'm thinking maybe it's just a different way to tell the story and for a different audience. And like when you're talking about Jurassic Park, or we can talk about Harry Potter and how the difference between the movies and the books and you know, the magic that was in those movies and the magic that was in those books were two completely different kinds of magic. And I'm not saying that you're not, like David was talking about compromise and some of the risks that you take in changing the original work. I think that sometimes there is value in the audience receiving a story differently than the original, because it's still a story. That was brilliant, wasn't it?
No, I like it. I like it. I think, I mean, ultimately, and I think this is something, getting back to the article, ultimately I think that this is something that this writer missed, is that, I mean, we're just storytellers, right? Like, if we're writers, that's all we're trying to do is convey, like, our story. And if you get people to be interested in what you're doing, then you're doing your job well. You know what I mean? And so, like, I'm thinking about Dan Brown. Like I said, everybody loves to be like, you know, when his newest book came out, there's all these articles, like, they're like, oh, look at these sentences, and look at how he uses these modifiers. And I'm like, that's great for you. You know, you people who ever want to be like overly critical of this work, that's fine. You know, whatever, knock yourself out. However, he's telling stories that people are interested in and that people want to read and engage with. And if you take this like down a level from this like idea that this is somehow like art, and I'm not saying that literature can't reach that level. I'm just saying, like, at its basic premise, like, books are, I mean, we're telling stories, right? Like, that's the whole idea. It's like, starting, we're sitting around campfires and telling each other stories.
Yeah.
And I think if you get too far from that idea, then you become like a big snooty snoot pants that wants to like.
That writes for the Guardian.
You know, write snarky articles for the Guardian. You know what I'm saying?
Hey guys, we want to get book reviews there one day, so let's. Author related, not Guardian related.
That would be fine.
I mean, I love the Guardian. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, we love the Guardian.
I mean, listen. Let me back up a little bit here.
That was beautiful, Ralph. I love the way you described that.
Ralph, maybe, yeah.
Sitting around the campfire telling stories, and that's I think that's such a good way to put it. You consider your audience, you're doing it for enjoyment, and you're doing it to share moments. And if you can achieve that, then you're achieving something worthwhile. And I think that's wonderful sentiment.
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely wonderful sentiment to wrap this down on as well. So this has been a really good conversation, and I've noticed some people joining in as we've been going along. So if you're interested in the article that we're talking about, it's in the links to the Google Hangout to everybody who's here with us on Google, and then I'll add it into the YouTube link after we close down the video. So feel free to chime in the comments and talk to us about it. You can chat with us about the subject more. Tell us what you think on Twitter. We are at FP Bookworks. And then we're going to let the panel introduce themselves to you again. So we're going to go down the line, and they love to talk to you as well, and they're going to tell you how you can find them, a little bit about their book, and how you can chat with them. So we'll start, we'll go David, Dory, and then Ralph. So introduce yourself, tell people how to find you, and whether or not you want to talk to them, because Mike was like, talk to me, but I might ignore you.
My name is David O'Sullivan, and I'm the author of The Bomber, and I have another novel coming out next month, Anvil Soul. You can find me at www.davidgosullivan, all one word, davidgosullivan.com. I put all my new writing there, and I love, if you'd like to interact with me, I absolutely love getting letters, kind, abusive, whatever they are. I love hearing from people. Because it keeps me in touch with readers, and if I was in front of the campfire telling stories, I would want people to call out and to ask questions as we go along. I love telling stories like that. So in a digital age, if you go to my website, feel free to contact me. There are ways to contact you. Have a quick look, and I'd be glad to get back to you.
My name is Dory Ann Dupre, and I am the author of Scout's Honor. My website is www.dory, D-O-R-I, which is different than Finding Dory, the movie. Ann, A-N-N, Dupre, D-U-P-R-E.com. And you can email me through there. I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Blogger, Goodreads, blah, 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 everywhere on social media. And I love to interact with people.
Okay.
It's your turn, Ralph.
I'm Ralph Pullins. I am the author of Anti-Artists, and I am mostly on Twitter at @RDPullins, and that's kind of like my main outlet. That's the way I like to get down. I'm also on Facebook, and I don't know how the links work there. It's like facebook.com/Ralph Pullins or something. I don't know. I'm on there, though, and I do mess around in a little bit, not too much, just kind of stay in touch with old friends. I have a website, and it is ralphpullins.com, all one word, and that's kind of where I do shorter pieces of writing and things like that. So that's that. That's how I do.
Yeah, so if you've joined us today, or you're following the conversation late, and you're an author or a writer, all of these authors have really amazing websites that are branded really well to their specific brand. They also feature a lot of their own personal writing, so if you're feeling stuck, go check them out, because all of these three authors are really talented, and their voice is really, I mean, I know I'm partial, but trust me, if you go to the different
I'm completely unbiased.
completely unbiased here, but no, like really when you read the different blogs that people put out, it's amazing just to get into their mind and see the different ways that these authors write, and it's very inspiring to get into their world and see how they brand themselves as an author. So if you're feeling stuck, visit their websites, you won't regret it, and reach out to us online, social media, chat with us individually together, and you can join us every Wednesday night, same time, 9:30 p.m., and so don't forget, July 21st, give up 1 cup of coffee to help Dory fight cancer. The link we will put, Yeah, absolutely. This is really important to us, and it's important that we always support our authors in anything that they do. So, internet world, join us on this. Let's fight cancer. $5. That's all you have to do. 1 cup of coffee. And then check out the new French Press Bookworks while you're at it, because we are bringing out a revolution for authors. It's going to be kind of like the Etsy of the publishing world, where you can now go to one website and get anything that you need for your book. But what's more important is you got to meet 3 awesome authors today. So join us next week, and thanks for hanging out with us. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.